them. This was made clear at Zhirinovsky's success in the December 1993 elections. The people rejected his policies. He is an artful demagogue. He plays on current ills. But Zhirinovsky and fascism in Russia won't succeed. If the government's policies remain as they are now, if people are thrown into the streets, and already the authorities and the president say that half of the population is below the poverty line, and that there are already millions of people unemployed, then this could stimulate extremism, and forces of an extremist order could emerge. So, again, the task today for all supporters of democracy is to change the current political course that could lead to such an outcome.
If you understand this, then President Yeltsin also understands it. He also understands that his ratings have fallen. President Yeltsin, in 1993, promised new presidential elections in June 1994. They did not take place. Recently, President Yeltsin's men, the men around him, have suggested that it would be good also not to have presidential elections in 1996, when they are now scheduled for.
This confirms the fact that they do not believe they will win the next election. It confirms that they see the results of their own political course and see that they would be defeated.
But there is a larger question here, a question bigger than Yeltsin and bigger than Gorbachev. Never in Russian history has a leader left power democratically. I mean, you didn't leave democratically. They abolished your office. Yeltsin is the first person now to have a chance to leave democratically. If he now talks about no election, will he leave? Will he leave democratically? Will Yeltsin leave office voluntarily? Or will it be a repetition of the old Russian tradition, that leaders stay until they're thrown out or until they die? I mean, this is about democracy.
I think that in general this reflects the uncertainty of the present authorities in their strength and their political course, which is very bad. I think that it is immoral and cynical to announce elections once again, misleading public opinion, and then give up on the idea of elections. Besides, I think it just won't happen, because the growing public opposition will begin to ripen for using unconstitutional methods to throw out the authorities who manipulate policies and move away from democracy to preserve their own power.
I was sitting a few nights ago with some Russian friends. They had had a little vodka and they became philosophical. And one said to me,
philosophy is usually the result of having drunk quite a bit.
Just a bit, quite a bit. And one philosophical man, a smart man, a Russian man, began speaking about Gorbachev and Yeltsin. And here's what he said, and I want to get your reaction. He said, history always plays tricks on Russia. And once again, history played a dirty trick on Russia. In 1985, when Russia needed a leader to destroy a system, it sent a man who was a builder. History sent Gorbachev. And then in 1991, when Russia needed a leader to build a system, it sent a destroyer, Yeltsin. And he said, you know, Russia would be so much better today if Yeltsin had been the leader from 1985 to 1991, and in 1991, Gorbachev would be the president. And again, history has treated Russia badly.
Ну, во-первых, история...
Have you heard this before?
Что-то близко.
Is it interesting? Is it interesting?
Это интересно, и я отреагирую на это. Для меня это интересно порассуждать. Во-первых, конечно, история не любит и не признает сослагательных наклонений.
Yes, it would have been a great misfortune if Yeltsin had come to power in 1985.
Не мог прийти, это абсолютно на 100% не мог прийти к руководству.
No, that I understand. This is a theoretical, philosophical, metaphorical conversation. This is a metaphor.
И еще.
First of all, there wouldn't have been any reform and there wouldn't have been any destruction because the regime at that time directly conformed with Yeltsin's nature and style. Nothing would have happened. Everything would have remained as it was.
Ничего бы не происходило, все осталось бы так же.
It is good that Gorbachev came at that time and made his choice in favor of reform. It was a difficult choice. It wasn't simple. Even after 1985, I continued to deepen my thinking, but I had already made my choice. Also, God forbid that someone like Yeltsin, first of all, if it was Yeltsin personally, then he would never have changed the regime. But if it was another person with a similar character, it would have been a misfortune. The system could not have been destroyed. A person who tried to do that wouldn't have lasted a week. He would have been removed immediately. He wouldn't have accomplished anything except to provide a reason to turn the screws even tighter, and any opportunity to transform society would have been lost. Therefore, a person and a group were needed who could see farther than tomorrow, people who were capable of looking beyond the horizon, who understood that a country like ours cannot change with a Chinese great leap forward or a great Soviet turnabout. To change, we needed a considered, long-term policy of evolutionary change through reform. This is the policy that I offered.
If a fair-minded historian, a balanced historian, a fair-minded historian must write a short, balanced appraisal of Gorbachev's achievements and failures to date, what would that person write if it had to be a short summary for an encyclopedia? I mean, could you write such a thing if you were a historian? If you had to study Gorbachev, what would you write?
Мне трудно писать
I think that my idea to give an impetus to democratic reforms and bring freedom to my suffering nation, to the Soviet country, I think that was the most important thing. It is very important to give people glasnost and democracy. Without this, it would have been hard to count on reforms going anywhere. Secondly, within the framework of these policies of perestroika, the politics of new thinking about international affairs were brought about which led to the results which we discussed. The reduced threat of nuclear war and the destruction of nuclear weapons. Many international conflicts have been resolved after decades of tension, and we have ended the Cold War. A great opportunity has appeared. In my opinion, this is the important thing. We could also speak about the spiritual freedom that has arrived. The greatest miscalculation was that I was not able to prevent the breakup of the Union. Everything else is less important. I could have done some things sooner or later, but that's less important. When we were carrying out reforms, I think that we could have focused more attention when we had solid popular support in creating the preconditions for small and medium-sized business, for agriculture, for trade, on making a solid market, on improving living conditions in order to extend people's desire for major changes. I think that in this area, we got the sequence of steps wrong. But you know, Steve, I don't know any happy reformers.
If you feel that your inability to hold the Union together, to hold the Soviet Union together, was your greatest failure and regret, then clearly the attempted coup against you in August 1991 was the greatest blow to you, because that defeated the effort to hold. I have to ask.
Но даже из этой попытки удалось выйти.
Absolutely. Moreover, it was still possible to recover from that coup attempt and resume the process of working out a new Union treaty. But then there were the ambitions of those who had come to my rescue in August 1991.
Well, let's call names names. That was President Yeltsin and his colleagues. By the way, I heard that they actually celebrated the abolition of the Union in your office. Is that true? That they had a party in your office after the signing of the Union? This happened? And you discovered it?
They telephoned me at my dacha and told me. I never went to that office again. They celebrated and rummaged through my desk. But I don't want to discuss that.
Они рылись в ящиках, там, искали что-то уже.
But therefore, a question that is of incredible importance, if the putsch against you was such a blow, such a turning point in your fortunes and the fortunes of your country, and everybody agrees that Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev was a great politician, how could you not have seen that putsch coming? Why did it take you by surprise? The Americans claim that they warned you. I was living here in Russia that year before the coup, and the newspapers were speculating that there might be a coup. How could it have taken you by surprise?
Ну, видите ли, тут надо вспомнить немножко.
There really wasn't anything surprising. The attacks on Gorbachev started in the fall of 1990 from the right and from the left. At the session of the Supreme Soviet, the so-called Union faction had already raised the issue of my ouster, claiming that as president I was not fulfilling my oath of office. This oath meant the use of force, which is what they wanted. But I should say the attacks on me from the leftist radicals continued as well. If you remember Yeltsin's February 1991 statement that President Gorbachev cannot be removed through constitutional procedure and therefore must be removed by demands from the people.
But wait a minute. This was because you were being accused of having used force in Lithuania in January 1991. That was Yeltsin's reaction. You were being accused of having known about the bloodshed in Europe. And then he reacted by saying,
Да, но Ельцин, кто?
Yes, but Yeltsin knew that Gorbachev did not use force, that it was done circumventing Gorbachev.
How did he know that? How did Yeltsin know that? How did Yeltsin know that?
Он знал, что я таких команд.
He knew that I gave no commands of this kind. Moreover, he and I had discussed this, and he knew from speaking to me that what was done in Vilnius circumvented me. That's the first point.
Maybe he didn't believe you. Maybe he didn't believe you.
Ну, это другое дело.
The second point is that at the April 1991 plenum of the Communist Party Central Committee, the question was raised of whether I would resign, and at the June session of Congress, Prime Minister Pavlov made his attempt to take my powers and was joined by Defense Minister Yazov. What was Gorbachev doing at this time? What was he thinking about?
Yes, I'd like to know. What were you thinking?
Я видел.
I didn't allow either side to dominate me. They were not able to do it through the Communist Party plenum, not through the Congress of People's Deputies.
Ни через пленум, ни через сессию, ни через съезд. Помните выступление у Малатовой с требованием
You would have a new party.
Поэтому,
Yes. Therefore, this was my way. Do everything in a reformist way within the framework of the Constitution and the political process. And once we had reached this stage and had received the authority from the republics for the anti-crisis program and also for the new Union Treaty, which had been approved by the Central Committee plenum, I believed that I would be able to carry these processes through to the end. And therefore, for them to stage a coup in that situation and under such conditions was reckless. It suffered defeat, just as it should have.
И должен был потерпеть поражение.
I'm not sure I fully understand this, but I recall you went to London in July 1991 to the meeting of the G7, the industrialized Western nations. Isn't that correct? It was July 1991. You went there with a request for a sizable financial aid, economic aid package to your government. And as I recall, there were no...
Такой просьбы
My
в
speech did not contain any
моем
such request.
выступлении не содержалось.
Yes, that's correct, but
А спор,
But there was a debate within the G7, and it was split.
и она раскололась.
here, because
Steve,
I
Steve.
remember I was here in Moscow, and many people felt that you had come home, as Americans say, empty-handed. And some people believe that had you come home not empty-handed, but with
That
some
is not
commitment,
serious.
that the putsch never would have begun, that they never would have dared strike against you if you had had Western support. Is that
Это,
possible?
знаете, очень несерьезные вообще
You know, that is not serious reasoning at all. Not serious reasoning because no amount of money, whether it was 10, 15, 20, 30, or even 100 billion would have saved Russia. Russia must, before all else, succeed on its own. Aid, yes, but Russia itself has to carry out the reforms.
Какая-то поддержка, да.
I don't understand. If in the summer of 1991, Gorbachev had prepared a new stage of reform. He had the republics prepared for a new union. He had an anti-crisis economic program. Soon in November of 1991, he would have a new social democratic political party. He would be free of the Communist Party and his own people. He still had Yeltsin as a partner. Then if I had been Gorbachev at that moment, I would have thought, my enemies, the enemies of reform, know this is their last chance to stop me. And therefore, I would have suspected them every minute of the day. I would have thought differently. You were overconfident.
Я считал и считаю.
I thought, and in my opinion, I was correct in thinking that they had already lost. But when it became known to them that there were talks going on between Gorbachev and Yeltsin and Kazakhstan Republic leader Nazarbayev, and that the talks would continue with other leaders of the republics, that we would not wait 6 months to write a new constitution, but on the basis of the new, detailed Union Treaty would immediately hold elections after the signing of the treaty. They knew that meant there would be changes in the government, in the KGB, in the defense ministry, and so on. That is what I was talking about with Yeltsin and Nazarbayev. That became known to the coup makers, and therefore there was no sort of struggle on their part to preserve the Union and so on. That's just demagoguery. There was only one thing that they were trying to protect. They did not want to give up power and retire, even though they were all around 70 years old. They would have left and lived. So what they did was reckless, dangerous and reckless.
Около 70 лет было. Ушли бы и жили.
You don't think any of them were motivated by patriotic anxiety about the future of the country? Were none of those people
No, I didn't agree with any of them.
who had been your own ministers and appointees, that some of them must have acted out of sincere motives?
Ну, послушайте, они на пленуме
Listen, they approved the Union Treaty at the plenum of the Central Committee. They approved the Union Treaty in the Supreme Soviet. They had some critical remarks, but who didn't have some criticism? The Democrats of the radical wing criticized me for signing an agreement that would lead to the destruction of the Union. That only meant that in that situation, it was a compromise that would preserve the country, a union government with a system that had elements of confederation.
Americans today look at Russia, and Russians look at Russia. Some people see here collapse, crisis, catastrophe.
Еще нет.
Wait.
Еще нет.
But wait.
Но угроза реальна.
But let me tell you the problem. Some people, Americans and Russia, look at Russia today and see crisis, collapse, catastrophe. But other people look at Russia today and see creativity. They see the birth of a new system. And they say, don't worry, it's just the birth pains, the normal birth pains of a new social political order. So we have two views of Russia: collapse, creativity; hope, catastrophe. What do you see? What should Americans see when they look at this country today?
На первое я уже сказал, еще не крах.
Those people who think that out of chaos something new will be born are irresponsible. Those are people who take advantage of the situation to grab something for themselves here in Russia, and those who want to grab it away from Russia. For them, the chaotic situation here is like the troubled water that people like to fish in. There is that attitude, I don't think it deserves to be supported. Yes, the situation today is one that gives birth to new forms and new resolutions in economics and in the social sphere. But this still is not enough to save Russia. Therefore, a change in the political course is necessary. The situation is very serious. Moreover, everyone is afraid of the corruption and crime. In this situation, political leaders at all levels and all sober-minded people have to act cautiously or just try to wait it out because they are afraid of the reaction of the criminal elements. And the current authorities can't cope with the situation. The decrees which the president has issued are laws without any legal basis. It has never been the case that such stepping beyond the bounds of the law led to stability in the society. If you go where these decrees are leading us, then we will end up in a situation where, as they used to say, when you cut wood, chips fly. It is the same old Russian approach. Therefore, I see that the current authorities cannot solve these problems. Therefore, we need a change, a new political coalition which would be able to propose a realistic course of action. It won't be simple. It will be complex and difficult. We need a group that is able to break the links between the criminal world and the economic and even government institutions. Without this, without a change in the political course, without new elections on all levels, this will not happen. I have been thinking about this for a very long time and have come to this conclusion. Moreover, the current regime is trying to limit democracy, glasnost, limiting freedom of the press, and people don't have a chance to really know what is going on. This is all bad. Therefore, we need a change. I don't think that I should leave politics, though Raisa would like me to. For me, this would be immoral, even a betrayal, especially now when the people are suffering and are looking for the answers to many questions. They want to know what's next. What would happen if all the Democrats ran away? If I were to leave now, it would be as if the fate of my nation, my people, and my reforms don't matter to me.
The preceding program was made possible by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Additional funding was provided by Public Radio International.